Hello and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today we are going to be drawing yet another Marvel Nemesis drawing. We're on the home stretch, only a couple more left. But today we're doing Iron Man, who is, I'd say, probably one of the more different designs of the lot. One of the more unique ones, at least. Hair is still falling in my face. But yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do Iron Man. I mean, I'm still doing Marvel Nemesis, so there's only so much you can really get from me now. Okay, so as per usual, I have done my base sketch. I forgot to open up my reference, I'll do that right now. But yeah, so with good old Iron Man, design is a bit of an odd one. Yeah, as I said there a minute ago, it's one of the more unique ones of the lot, and yeah, he's got kind of, yeah, as I say, he's not necessarily like a hugely different Iron Man design. He's kind of more or less what they were going for in the 90s, which, yeah, again, that kind of would have bled over a little bit into the early 2000s. But by the time that this game would have come out, they would have moved quite a bit past that design, which is why it's kind of strange that they're still using it in the game. But yeah, I'll get into it here and kind of start trying to figure things out. See, Iron Man, the shape of Iron Man's helmet or his mask is kind of weird in this, because it's kind of very much the kind of very rounded shapes, which, yeah, I wouldn't exactly associate particularly round shapes with Iron Man. Usually with Iron Man you'd expect to see kind of like sharp angles and stuff like that, and I have to say I've never felt like I was particularly good at drawing Iron Man, because Iron Man's always got a very kind of particular look. Which yeah, it's a case of where I struggle quite a lot with the kind of the straighter lines that you're supposed to be doing with Iron Man, and it doesn't help that with Iron Man in Marvel Nemesis, basically the art and the actual in-game model are really different. So I'm kind of gonna just be taking bits and pieces from both. And just more or less just winging it, because yeah, like his little mouth here is kind of present in some of the art, and then it's basically not there at all in the game, so it's just kind of it's a bit of a pain in the ass, really, of where like this kind of little chin section here is in the game, and it's gold in the game, but in the art it's red as well, so it just makes things a lot harder. A lot harder than I feel like they should be. But yeah. Yeah, I find that Iron Man not really, like, not even that I'm not a huge fan of drawing Iron Man, I'm not very good at drawing Iron Man, I feel like. Because, yeah, again, very straight lines and stuff. But, yeah. Yeah, Iron Man and Marvel Nemesis is a bit of an odd beast, because, yeah, there's all these kind of weird rounded areas as well, which you wouldn't expect to see in Iron Man's design. You'd expect to see more of, yeah, sharp straight lines. That's not really how it is with Marvel Nemesis Iron Man. Because again, as I say, in the early 2000s, they would have kind of migrated over to the, what was it, the Extremist design, I believe. Or he had a new design for like New Avengers and stuff like that, so he would have had, yeah, very kind of sharp lines and angles and stuff in him. And they would have moved past the 90s design of where it was kind of all the red was kind of localized on the top, and then it was mostly gold below. That's kind of still what they're doing with the design in this game. Again, as I say, it would have been they would have been far past that design in the comics at this stage, and Iron Man hadn't been in a movie yet, so it's a case of where a lot of elements of Iron Man in Marvel Nemesis very odd because, yeah, like, basically all the characters that were in Marvel Nemesis were there because they were popular at the time, or not even that they were necessarily just popular at the time, but that they were in films and stuff like that. So it's kind of odd to me that Iron Man is in the game at all because he hadn't been in a film yet, and his film was still another good few years off. I don't even know if it would have been in active production at that point. I think they would have probably still been trying to get it off the ground in 2005. So, this is the thing. It's kind of odd to me that Iron Man's in the game at all. And yeah, and particularly the way, that he looks the way he does in the game. Because, yeah, like, that would have been kind of unusual for the time. And yeah, again, I'm kind of winging it a little bit with some of this stuff, because in the art he has these little lines coming off of his mask, which he does not have in the game. In the game, his mask is simply just the kind of the grey, gold, the silvery colour that most of him is. Yeah, that's another thing. We'll get more into that whenever we're getting to colours, though. Just gonna see what I can do about adding some kind of just something to make him look a little bit more interesting, because he'll end up looking very smooth if I don't do too much here. I don't want to overdo it though, because yeah, the last thing you want is for him to have too many lines going on. I should probably mention that my reference for this is a little still from one of the Hot Toys, because it's a little tricky to get a good Iron Man pose sometimes, and so I mean I would normally use kind of stock reference stuff like that to kind of just get an idea of a pose, but with this I just used a pose from one of the promo images for Hot Toy, because good god, you're trying to find a good Iron Man pose, and also I'm not willing to put the time and effort into coming up with a pose on my own, particularly for this garbage. I've already put far too much time and effort. I've already put far too much time and effort into Marvel Nemesis crap at this point. You know, I may end up coming across as maybe a little harsh in what I'm gonna talk about when it comes to there you go, there's my reference again. But yeah, as I say, I may come across as maybe a little bit more harsh in how I'm gonna come across talking about Jay Lee's art for Iron Man in Marvel Nemesis. And yep, as I've said before, Jay Lee is the artist who did the console version art, and again, it's much harder to find the other art for whatever reason. But yeah, I have to say, I feel like Jay Lee really missed the mark when it comes to how Iron Man looks in his art, because Iron Man's armor looks very clothy, which naturally is not how Iron Man's armor is supposed to look. Iron Man's armor is supposed to be metal. In the game, it's supposed to be metal. Whenever he walks around, it makes a big heavy clunking noise, so I mean, it's clearly supposed to be metal, which is why it's kind of questionable that Jay Lee ended up deciding to make it look like cloth whenever he drew it for the art in the game. Which, yeah, I have to say, yeah, definitely misses the mark. And again, like, the art for the game, it doesn't look anything like how he looks in the game. Like, color-wise, he's very different. He's got black in his design in the game, whereas he's not got any black in his design in the art. And just tons of little things like that, of where it just seems like there was no coordination or what have you. Someone didn't do their job. and yeah, in the art he looks nothing like he does in the game. So yeah, that's the kind of thing, and I'm very much struggling to work with the chest here, because it's a tough area, and particularly like just drawing circles. I think drawing circles, more often than not, you'll end up with bold and brash. Hopefully people get that reference. So something that I'm kind of doing here is I am changing the design a little bit because I think it's just kind of frustrating the way that this design is. So I'm changing in little ways to, like, there's no separation in the middle of his chest because his little chest beam is a little higher. But the issue is the kind of proportions of his chest make it seem like his chest is like really high up. So I brought down his chest a little bit so that it looks a little bit more proportional with how he is here. And I've kind of, yeah, then as a result of that brought down the chest beam, which means there's a lot more blank area in his chest. So I've added a little bit more kind of separation here. So I'll even maybe make that a little bigger, that line there. So that, yeah, there's some separation in his pecs. So that he at least looks, you know, a little bit more like a human. Because Iron Man looks very robotic. He looks, yeah, a lot more like a robot in Marvel Nemesis, which isn't something I'm a big fan of. I don't like Iron Man looking like too much of a robot. That's more of a preference thing, though. So this is the thing. I'm not too keen on it, but some people like it. So I don't know. I feel like, yeah, he looks very robotic, which isn't something I'm too crazy about, but there's only so much I can really change that. This kind of comes down here. He's got a lot of weird little design elements like this. It's not quite that rigid. It's too straight a line. That comes down maybe a little bit more like this, and then down like that, and then. A little bit better, I think. I don't know, it's a bit of a strange shape. But yeah, I mean, there's certain elements of him which aren't that hard to draw because his arms are mostly just gold. So I don't need to add too much kind of detailing on certain elements. But yeah, I feel like he's going to end up looking very smooth by the end of this. That's kind of how he looks in the game. He looks very smooth in Marvel Nemesis, which again, I'm not big on Iron Man looking smooth. In some of the films he looks too smooth and it just makes the special effects look kind of weird of where he's too shiny. I don't like Iron Man being too shiny because it just, yeah, it makes him look weird. Because, yeah, like the special effects don't really like whenever it's something too shiny because, as well, they usually have the films take place on very overcast days, so it's like, I don't know, it looks kind of weird whenever it's a very overcast day and you're dealing with a very shiny material. It's gonna cause issues. It's gonna make it a little harder than if you're using like very intense lighting scenarios. Something shiny will be a little bit more interesting looking. But yeah, whenever you're doing stuff like that, it'll kind of it'll make it look a little bit more boring whenever you're doing stuff like that. Right. This gauntlet is going to look a little small because of the perspective. This hand is kind of coming out a little bit, so the wrist here will seem a little smaller. I'm going to have to bring myself out, but yeah, the wrist here will seem a little smaller in comparison because it's closer to the frame, so it'll seem smaller. But well, it's kind of bigger but also smaller. You're seeing less of it, but it's larger. Whereas down here, you're seeing more of it, but it's smaller in a sense. But yeah, so that's just a little bit of foreshortening there that I've talked you through. But yeah, the shape of this gauntlet is a bit funky. So now I have an issue, and it's that in any of the art, Iron Man's hands are kind of the same silvery color, but in the game they're red. So I think I'm going to go with them being red, because that's a little bit more, looks better. Color-wise, it balances the colors a little better than all the kind of everything being gold. Because all his lights are gold as well, so the thing, it'll look weird if it's gold on gold. yeah, no, I'm going more off of the how he looks in the game for Iron Man, rather than off the art, because I've already said, like, the art I think is just filled with inconsistencies for Iron Man. It's got a lot of things in it which I'm not a fan of. So that shouldn't be, there shouldn't be a circle there. Let's get rid of that. There shouldn't be anything outlining that. But yeah, I'm kind of struggling with parts here because a lot of the in-game models are obviously very low res. So I'm just kind of winging it a little bit in terms of how things are going. Yeah, his hands are very smooth. Again, everything with Iron Man here is very smooth, so I'm just kind of adding in little bits to, I guess, make it a little bit more interesting looking. I mean, this is a lot of how Iron Man looks in the films, so I've kind of added those kind of lines that he has in the movies onto his hands. Oh, excuse me. But yeah, a few little bits like this that I have to add in now. There's bits of Iron Man here which seem very kind of toyish to me, like just how big his gauntlets are. It feels very toyish, and yeah, maybe not crazy on that. I feel like Iron Man a lot of the time looks kind of like a toy most of the time, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not kind of crazy on Iron Man's design here because it's a bit of a mess, all in all. And yeah, just kind of, there's a lot going. It's weird in that it seems like there's a lot going on, but it's also very smooth. A lot of his design is very, yeah, as I say, smooth. Which just feels very, there's this kind of weird juxtaposition with it of where there's simultaneously too much going on and also not enough going on. Of where, yeah, there's stuff like yeah, his hands are like completely smooth. There's nothing on them. There's no detailing at all on his hands. But yet, then the gauntlets will also be super over detailed in a sense of where there's this kind of lines all over him. And then bits like his chest, there's a lot of kind of these little lines on his chest. I mean, you expect a lot of lines with Iron Man. You do come to expect a lot of kind of little lines and stuff with Iron Man. So that's just the nature of his designs. Well, that's the nature of all his designs, like post the original like silver design. Because that one was supposed to be fairly simple. But stuff like, yeah, his kind of, all his red designs and stuff like that, they've all been very kind of complex line work wise, and just, yeah, there's a lot going on with them, so I mean, you do come to expect it in a sense, which is, you know, not crazy on that part. I mean, I like lines as much as the next guy, but you know, there's a point where it becomes too much. There's a point whenever you get to, I always use it as the example, there's a point whenever you get to the Flash design from Justice League, of where it's like, yep, that's too much. There's too many lines. There's far too many lines in that design. You're going a little overboard with that. But yeah, like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not really crazy on Iron Man's design here. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Iron Man as is. I mean, he's fine. I think Iron Man's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. But I've never been a huge fan of Iron Man, and Iron Man's always been quite popular. Like, I mean, even before the movies, Iron Man was a fairly popular character. Obviously not as big as he was after the movies. After the movies started coming out, but he has always been kind of popular. Like, oddly popular, I would say. Because, yeah, like, he'd never been in in like a movie or anything like that. Obviously never quite as popular as even as like Spider-Man or the X-Men or Hulk or anything like this, but he was still like pretty popular. Like, yeah, I guess he was one of those characters that Marvel just always kind of put in things, because, yeah, he was just very popular. And I'm not really sure what the reason was as to why he was so popular. But yeah, I mean, people like Iron Man, so I mean, they're allowed to. I'm not one of these people who's gonna say people can't like things. Here we're getting into another one of these weirder elements of this design of where Iron Man's got like weird, like, groin high boots. For whatever reason. And they just got a very weird design to them. And again, this leg is raised, you're not going to be seeing quite as much of this as you would the other leg. That one's straightened, so yeah, that's the kind of the basic foreshortening stuff. I feel like I've drawn Iron Man with very wide hips here. Perspective here is a little weird, I think. Definitely on this leg. It's causing me some trouble there. But yeah, this is just a tricky one. It's just a tricky one, I think, all in all. And the pose is also a bit difficult, but that's kind of not the... Realistically, that's the least of my worries here. It's the design that's causing me more trouble than anything else, I think. Because, yeah, the design here is just... The legs in particular are where it starts going a little too far with just all the just bits and shit like everywhere. Ugh. Developed the habit of swearing on this show now, and I've not intended on doing it, but it's happened. Yeah, it does appear to have become a trend now, which is not something I intended. I don't intend on bleeping any of it out. That's more effort than I'm willing to put in. I think certain elements of this are always going to look weird because this knee pad looks very strange here. It's very large here. But yeah, I feel like certain elements of this are just kind of a bit screwed as it happens, I think. I think certain elements of this are beyond my power to fix at this stage. Because a lot of this comes down to just how bizarre looking the design is. And some of it comes down to difficulty of interpretation and all this type of stuff. This needs to come out more. Because yeah, a lot of this stuff just looks wrong the way it's the way that I draw it, but that's just how it looks. It's just how it looks. No, it's not exactly my fault that some of this looks weird, particularly his legs. It's just that is actually how it looks. It is actually how they made it look. Which, yeah, is questionable in its own right, but we're not here, well, I mean, we're kind of half here to judge the design, but we're also here to continue it for some reason. Alright, well, that's the kind of, the basic details of Iron Man. And yeah, as I've been saying, it's just kind of a bit of an annoying design. Bit of an annoying design, to be honest, because of just kind of how messy everything is with it. Yeah, it feels like I'm trying to kind of keep it clean because there's so much going on with the design. Maybe there's so much going on. There's not that much going on. It's just a case of where just all these bloody little lines and everything, which is a thing with Iron Man. But the feet stand out now. The feet stand out a lot because there's nothing you can really add to his feet, because his feet, they're just little shoes basically, for some reason. They're just little shoes, and it's kind of hard to do anything with them. So they kind of stand out as being a little weird when compared to like his upper body or the leg right below it or right above it. So it's kind of annoying that. But yeah, let's kind of just get into the dots. I'll probably be quiet for the majority of this, because this might take a while. Just realized I forgot to do the pattern on this. Yeah, you know, while I'm talking, I may as well say that I forgot to do it here as well. Jeez. I may as well say this. Yeah, while I'm at it here, but something which I suppose is just a kind of a fact of whenever you're doing shading like this, whenever you're doing very intense shading like this. Not even intense shading, but whenever you're shading with something which has which changes how a lot of stuff looks, like the dots. Something that's just going to happen is that you're going to lose a few details. It's just going to happen whenever you're shading, whenever you're coloring, whenever you're doing anything like that. You're going to maybe lose a little bit of detail somewhere. And it's something which I suppose you need to be aware of whenever you're shading stuff, or whenever you intend to shade something, because it's a case of where there's no point in kind of spending all day doing all these details whenever you know they're going to get lost somewhere. But I mean, I do them partly as a demonstration and partly because I just like doing the details. Which, yeah, that's fine as well. If you like doing it, there's no problem in that. But yeah, it's a case of where, say, whenever you're putting in these details, it's a case of where yeah, you shouldn't be afraid of kind of covering stuff up with shading or with kind of color and all that stuff, because it's changing the stuff, and most of the time it's changing it for the better. It makes it look better overall whenever it's shaded properly, and whenever you've not kind of been dancing around a certain area or anything like that. Whenever you're just shading it properly, and whenever you're not afraid of shading it properly, that's kind of whenever it starts to look better. It improves it overall, so you shouldn't be afraid of doing it. And it's something which I used to do, is that I used to be kind of very careful whenever I would be shading not to cover up details and stuff like that, and I'd be very careful on my color choices, that I wouldn't be picking stuff too dark because I didn't want to obscure any of my details. But it's a case of where it does genuinely make the thing look better, even if you might be a little averse to the idea of covering stuff up initially. It does genuinely improve the final product for the most part. Turn these dots off for a second while I'm doing this. Just filling in these little lines here, which I forgot to put in. Earlier on. But yeah, that's just the kind of the thing with whenever you're doing like shading and coloring, all this stuff, is that you just need to kind of be aware of that stuff and not be afraid of changing stuff. So I feel like maybe he doesn't look that shiny, but we'll be kind of fixing some of that whenever we're doing the light line at the end. So what's next on the agenda? Color. So here's where we get tricky. So Iron Man's realistically got two, no, he's got three colors, because he's got a lighter red and a darker red here. There is some black. There is some black in his design here. Now the question is, how much of it am I going to use? I think, to be honest, I'm not going to use the black, and I'm just going to make it a dark red instead. I'm just going to use the same dark red, because that'll be a little bit more it'll fit the color scheme a little bit more, rather than the black. I feel like the black doesn't really fit at all. So yeah, we'll start with that, I think. And yeah, there's a little bit of patterning I have to do on his chest and on his hand here, which I'll do with the dots later on. Yeah, there is a little bit black. I'm just gonna make that the dark red. So maybe I should start with the dark red. Yeah, I'll start with the dark red. But yeah, something to note is that the gold in his design. All my reds I think are gonna be kind of maybe a little skewed more orange because that's the kind of the more hot rod red that Iron Man has. But yeah, so something to note is that the a lot of the what am I trying to say here? A lot of the gold in his design, depending on the art or the game, changes in how gold it is. So in the art, it's basically silver, and in the game, it's a little gold. Not very gold, it's a little gold. And then in the art, certain elements are flipped. So these elements in the game, these like sharper elements going kind of around everything, they're the lighter red in the art, but in the game they're the dark red. I feel like it makes more sense for them to be the dark red, because that'll be the same color as the shoulder pads. That'll also be dark red. So it makes sense to me there, for those bits to be darker red. Another element which I think I'm going to change is this part here is light red in the game. I think I'm going to change this bit to be dark red, so that this bit is light red, and then the outside of this is going to be the dark red, because that'll make a little bit more sense to me if this is the dark red and then these bits are also the dark red. So I'll do that. I'll change our burst size here briefly. Also, I'm going to be upping Iron Man's vibrancy a good bit here, because Iron Man is very dull in his colors in the game. So this is our dark red and this is already pretty vibrant, so we're going to be bumping everything up a little bit more so that he looks more like Iron Man and not like he's like in this kind of basically this dull drab armor. Going to be bumping everything up to look a little bit more interesting. Okay, I think I may have actually ended up starting with the colour that Iron Man has the most of in this design, being his dark red. I mean, if we're going this way, I may as well go with the lighter red next. Let's call it red. I think this red is perhaps a touch too bright. I think it's maybe a little eye burning. I think we need to make it a little duller. Maybe a touch darker. Like this maybe. That's a little better. It's maybe not quite as electric as it was before. Yeah, I definitely think that's a little better. Okay, so what else have we to do? We've got to do his gold. I think that's the next one. Because yeah, we're really going in descending order of the amount of whatever it is we're doing. So gold is next. Gold is next. Now, so here is our question: do we want to make it far more gold? Answer is yes. I'm gonna make it a lot more gold than it is in the actual game, because in the game it's very silvery, which I don't like. I don't like whenever it's kind of silvery. Our man's gold is basically yellow usually. Make it. Maybe we'll have a look at it like this and see what this does for us. See what this does for us. Okay. Hell, you know what? I think we could do it brightening up this gold a touch. It's maybe a little too dark. So brighten it up a little bit. Hell, even a little bit more. That's maybe a little too pale. It's looking a little better to me. It's looking a little better. At least he's still gold. He's still got the gold. Now, so this is where we're going to start getting tricky. Because we've got lights to deal with. So, I think what we should do is we should first do black, because his little mouth hole is not going to have light coming from it. That shouldn't have light coming from it. That would look weird if that had light coming from it. So we'll make that black. His eyes are going to be white. His eyes are white in game, and they emit quite a bit of light. So, his chest does not emit very much light at all. So we'll make the chest and the hand the same, and then so we'll make that yellow, because that is yellow. Might as well put it under that. So this is yellow. So we'll make it about somewhere here, where it's pretty bright. Because we do want it to be bright enough. Okay, you can make it a touch paler than that. There is a thing that I want to do here, because it has this pattern in game. So it's got like a kind of an orangey pattern on it, and that pattern is a dot pattern. So we'll use this, make it yay big, and then we'll just do this. That's not what I wanted really. This is a little more along the lines of what I was looking for. There. Hell, put it on the hand as well, why not? Okay, it's a little tricky to see naturally because it's orange on yellow, but what else needs to be done? So I think this needs to emit a little bit of light, but you're not really going to see it. So this is going to be tricky now, because I need to put this up here, which means I need to get you. I need to get this. I need to start rubbing stuff out. So I want this to emit light. So go into outer glow, make it normal, and then have it be, you want it to be a warmer color usually, or at least a brighter color than what it is, so that it comes across a little more. We don't want it to be too intense though, we just want it to be kind of a little bit of it. Something like that, where there's a little bit of light coming out of it. Yeah, maybe we'll even put it up here. It's a little odd looking whenever it's like that. We'll bring it down a little bit, I think. Bring it down to here, and then I'll alter how intense this glow is. And bring down the glow a touch. Now the next thing on the agenda I do need to do outside. The next thing is white. So white I need to be very careful with. So it's going to be white and it's going to give off a little bit of yellow. So I may as well make it like a whitish yellow. So this is what I need to be careful of. So what I should do is I should put in the background first. Should put in the background first because that will make things a little easier. If I do that now. So I'll grab that. Now we have to color in our white. Just double check here, make sure I've not gone over the lines anywhere too egregious. That seems fine enough. Yeah, but I've actually been surprisingly good about that. There is a little bit of the dark red though that I have to clean up. Just here. This is why I normally put the background on early. So that does not happen. I'm still on the dots. That's not what I want. Now, be very careful with how much our white covers, because our white is going to have a hefty amount of glow coming off of it, because that's what his eyes look like in the game. Has a hefty amount of glow coming off of it. So now I'm going to put this up here. And then we're going to put another glow on it, which will be white. I'll make this normal, not green tone. And then spread it out, and then bump it up. Spread it out, and then bump it up. Bring it down maybe a little bit so it's a little bit more reasonable. Okay, so I think maybe it doesn't need to be quite that white, it needs to be a little bit yellower. That looks alright. What I will do is I'll add a touch of inner glow so that it looks a little bit better. I'll have the inner glow be much more kind of yellow. It'll be very faint. See, this is the thing, I think regardless of what I do with the inner glow, it's going to look very faint. Regardless. It's just to kind of help your eyes tell what's going on there. But yeah. That looks okay. That's all our colors done. More or less everything done. I may as well throw you one. Actually no, before I do that I need to do light line signature, all that good stuff. So we're encroaching on the end. I'm really skipping some steps here because I nearly forgot to shade in. Nearly forgot to do the color shading. And this may take a bit. This has been a really long one so far. We're nearly 2 hours in and I'm not even close to being done yet. I'll try to kind of speed through some of this stuff a little bit. Yeah, I really did think I was nearly done there for a sec. Okay. I'll try and blast through this step. Okay, there are our darks done. Now onto our lights. And boy oh boy, that was a lot of darks. So, yeah, onto the lights. Okay. Okay, we're finally done with that. So, yep, we are well over 2 hours now. So I started to do the light line and everything. So, next on the agenda, that would be the signature. I'll do this very quickly. size smaller. Okay, there's the signature, and now it is the white line. So, since we're going to be making Iron Man shiny enough, I'm not going to make him like super shiny. I'm going to give him just like a little bit of thickness around the edges, and that's it. That's it, really. Just so that he's got a little bit of sheen to him, because I mean he should be a bit shiny. He's metal, so this is the thing. He is made of metal. Okay, so that's it. I've done the light line now. It took a while, and oh boy did it take a while. I mean, it didn't take that long. It took about 10 minutes. But yeah, so next on the agenda, last thing. Finally, the last thing. Ooh, excuse me. But yeah, next, gonna grab the ugly gradient map. Gonna take that one and then drop it in here. And so, yep, that's not a very pleasant look. It does make this light much more prominent for whatever reason. It makes the glow much more prominent, but we're not going to use that one. We're going to use something which pronounces the red and the gold a little bit more. So, what we're going to do is, I've forgotten where it was for a second there. New adjustment layer, yep, and the gradient map. Okay, so what we're going to do for our darkest is we're going to make our darkest a kind of a red color. A very kind of prominent red color. Very deep red. And then we're going to make our lightest a very kind of light yellow color. And then our middle is going to be naturally a kind of an orangey color, but we're going to make it a bit more of like a little bit skewed more to be red. A little bit more of a reddish orange. So we've got a very bright color palette here, which means we're probably going to have to alter it maybe. So overlay, that's pretty bright. And then soft light, which is, yeah, much better. Overlay, for whatever reason, like basically makes the texture disappear for whatever reason. I don't know why. But soft light is more our speed. I'm going to turn it down to be about 60. I think it's actually appropriate that this part of this part of the background is actually higher up. So we're getting a lot more sky in the background. I think it's actually oddly appropriate given how Iron Man's supposed to be flying. But yeah, I can get rid of Human Torch here once this is done saving. And so yeah, that is that. We're finished. We finished Iron Man. So, what did we talk about? We talked about we talked a lot about color, to be honest. We talked a lot about the kind of the different types of stuff. We talked a lot about the design itself. So we talked a lot about how basically, yeah, with Jay Lee's design for this, or with Jay Lee's drawings for Marvel Nemesis Iron Man, it looks very kind of like cloth. For some reason, it doesn't look like armor. It doesn't look shiny even. It just looks like cloth, which it's not supposed to. And yeah, so we also talked about, we talked quite a bit about this design. We went in a little bit about shininess and a little bit about lighting. We talked a lot about foreshortening and perspective, oddly enough, because of this leg and this hand. We talked a little bit about perspective. But yeah, I think we talked a lot during this, but there's probably a lot which I've forgotten about. There's plenty I've forgotten about, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I think that's it. We're done. If you liked the video, do what you'd normally do. What else do I normally say? Oh yeah, you can subscribe if you'd like. And share, I guess, if that's a thing. I don't bother to check these things. I think there's still a share function. Like, I guess. I guess that acts as the same thing, more or less. But anyways, yeah. Bye-bye.